But we are going to start with Real Madrid, who have filed a hate crime complaint with Spanish prosecutors, after their forward Vinicius Junior was racially abused by a supporter during their match with Valencia last night. In further developments in the past hour, the head of the Spanish Football Federation says the country has a problem with racism. Well, after the incident, the player tweeted this: "It wasn't the first time, nor the second, nor the third. Racism is normal in LaLiga. The championship that once belonged to Ronaldinho, Ronaldo, Cristiano and Messi today belongs to racism. A beautiful nation which welcomed me and which I love, but which agreed to export the image of a racist country to the world. I'm sorry for the Spaniards who don't agree, but today in Brazil, Spain is known as a country of racists. And unfortunately, for something that happens each week, I have no defence." Well, LaLiga are collecting images and information to open an investigation into the incident. Since the start of last season, they have filed 9 complaints to authorities for racist comments directed at the Real Madrid forward. Spanish police are also investigating a possible hate crime against him before January's Madrid derby. Now, the La Liga president, Javier Tebas, responded to the situation on Twitter, saying Vinicius needed to inform himself properly before criticising the league. This is what he said: "Before criticising and insulting La Liga, it is necessary that you inform yourself properly. Do not let yourself be manipulated and make sure you fully understand each other's competencies and the work we have been doing together." The Real forward replied to that tweet saying, "Once again, instead of criticising racists, the president of La Liga appears on social media to attack me. Admitting yourself only makes you equal to racists. I'm not your friend to talk about racism. I want actions and punishments. Hashtag doesn't move me." Piara Power is the executive director of anti-discrimination group FAIR Network, and he's told us today that there is a big problem with racism in La Liga.
The responsibility, as La Liga sees it, is not theirs to take action. Theirs is to make complaints. And so therefore, you don't have them addressing their own clubs whose fans are responsible for some of the chanting. And then you have the response from Tebas, the response from the La Liga co-commentary last night during the match was that somehow Vinicius is himself to blame because of the way in which he dances, because of the way in which he sometimes likes to rile fans. You know, this guy is a goal machine. He's probably one of the best players, best young players in Europe right now. And then to blame him for the racism that he's being subjected to is part of the problem. There just isn't the sort of awareness that we need to see in Spain. There isn't the sort of debate that we need to see. And people like Tebas are reinforcing those stereotypes and those ideas that Vinicius himself is to blame, which I think is something that is quite crazy, really. How do you bring on racism onto yourself when you are, as I say, probably the best young player in Europe right now? You're doing your job and doing it in a way which everybody accepts is quite remarkable. The only people defending him, I think, at the moment are his own teammates and his coach. We saw a very strong statement from Carlo Ancelotti. Other white players in the league are silent. Other coaches in the league are too scared of upsetting their own fans. I mean, there's no question that this country, in terms of its football and issues around racism in particular, is in crisis. There's no clear plan of action as to what they should do. There's no focus going forward. You can talk to different stakeholders, different actors, whether it's La Liga, the FA, the government, or the Players Association, and they all have very different perspectives. So sadly, I don't see a solution to this very soon.
Well, joining us now to get the perspective from Brazil is the South American football expert, Tim Vickery. Good afternoon to you, Tim. So look, just tell us, what's the reaction there to what we've seen last night?
Well, the reaction has come right from the top. President Lula has condemned what happened in the Valencia stadium yesterday. He said it is absolutely unacceptable that this is still going on in the 21st century. Flavio Dino, who is Brazil's justice minister, has called for consequences, not just condemnation. There must be consequences for what happened yesterday. It's only 12 days ago that Brazil and Spain signed a joint agreement to fight xenophobia and racism. So the strength of that agreement is already being put to the test, because what happened yesterday has been coming and coming and coming throughout the season. This is at least the 9th time that Vinicius Junior has been racially abused during games. Because we're at the business end of the stadium, I think this was particularly severe what happened yesterday, and there seem to be no consequences and no real acceptance from the authorities that there is a necessity for consequences. And as we've just heard, Vinicius is being painted disgracefully as the problem here, where this is a young man who seems to be so unprotected. Even today, yes, his club have come behind him with what Real Madrid have filed, the complaint they filed today. You wonder why that wasn't done last night. So much of his defence has been left to, as our friend has just said, his teammates and his coach. And word in Brazil from Vinicius Junior's people is that he's just had enough. Now, he's just extended his contract until 2027. But unless there are severe action, unless there are severe consequences to a problem which has clearly been allowed to grow out of control because there haven't been consequences, this hasn't been nipped in the bud earlier, I think Vinicius will be very unhappy to continue his career at Real Madrid if there are not consequences from what happened yesterday.
Yeah, Tim, I have to agree with you on that. In terms of what happened yesterday, Carlo Ancelotti revealed that he did actually speak to Vinicius, and it would appear that he wanted to continue on the pitch. What do you think? Do you think walking off that pitch, do you think that kind of gives into the racists, or do you think that would have been a really good move from him?
Well, it's not really my place to say what a 22-year-old black man receiving that kind of treatment should have done. So don't take advice from me. But I would say, in the insignificance of my opinion, that it would have been better had he walked off. It would have been better had he said, this is absolutely unacceptable. This totally extrapolates football. This is bigger than football. And I apologise for the pretension here. If I was in the position of Carlo Ancelotti there, the older, one would hope, wiser man, I would have said, walk off. If this is too much, and it is too much, walk off. So I apologise for the pretension there, but that's what I would have done. It's easier, I think, for me to put myself in the shoes of Ancelotti than it is of those of Vinicius Junior.
No, I agree with you wholeheartedly in that. I think a lot of us, older heads are thinking Ancelotti maybe an arm around and said, you know what, you don't have to deal with this. Bearing in mind the fact that he is only still 22 and the fact that he is actually just doing his job, how much outrage is there in terms of Brazil out there as a nation at what they're witnessing, do you feel? How much are they standing behind their player?
Plenty, and he had to go through a fair bit of this in Brazil, and Brazil is by no means blameless in this. So he's had to fight, and this is something which has given him strength, perhaps a little bit too much strength yesterday. Perhaps as we're saying, perhaps it would have been better had he said, no, walk off, don't want to deal with this. But, he hasn't got where he's got by luck. And he hasn't got where he's got just by talent either. There has been an extraordinary amount of dedication and hard work. And he had to overcome prejudice in Brazil before he had to overcome prejudice in Spain. It's much more public and I think much more damaging now in Spain because he seems so isolated. But yes, now the nation stands behind him. And again, I apologise for taking this purely back to football terms for a minute. With Neymar's injury problems and his uncertain future, I think now whoever the next Brazil coach is, and it could well be Carlo Ancelotti, that's the man that Brazil wants. Vinicius Junior has now become the leading attacking weapon of the Brazilian national side. So he's very important to them, and the nation now is very, very proud of him, and absolutely indignant with the fact that this isn't happening once. This has happened again and again and again. And there have been opportunities to head this off. There have been opportunities to draw a line and say, look, this behaviour is unacceptable. And we clearly saw from the quote there from Tebas, we clearly saw that they are more inclined to see Vinicius as the problem. And so it isn't being dealt with. And there have been so many opportunities to deal with this, to draw that line in the sand. Now we have reached a point where something must be done. And in so many in a stadium behaving in that way, Spain, Spanish football, La Liga, can no longer exist in a climate of denial. Your dirty, disgusting laundry has been displayed to the world. Do something about it. That is the message from Brazil. But I think it's the message from football lovers all over the world.
Yeah. Yes, I can't deny that. That's how I feel this morning. Certainly very angry about this situation myself as a football fan. If we look back in the past, Tim, you've got the likes of Ronaldo, you've got Roberto Carlos, Ronaldinho, Rivaldo. There's a huge number of amazing black Brazilian footballers that have played in Spain. And obviously, Vinicius has said that Brazilians now consider Spain a racist country. Do you think we might just see a reluctance from players to actually even go there and ply their trade there?
It's the lure of Real Madrid and Barcelona is difficult to ignore. And look, for example, at say, Felipe Coutinho, when he was at Liverpool, and he wrecked his career going to Barcelona in a move that you knew couldn't work. It was a bad move from the club and a bad move from the player. But if you're an attacking Brazilian talent and Barcelona come knocking. So Rafinha, more recently, of Leeds going to Barcelona. So there is an allure. That allure is very, very strong. Clearly, what's happening to Vinicius does put a stain on this. And it's a stain which I think has been building for a long time. I spoke a few years ago to, unfortunately, the now late, great Colombian, Freddie Rincon, who played his foot. We're going back more than 30 years. He was at Real Madrid. And he told me then that the Real Madrid coach said, "You're the best player. You're the best player at the club. But I can't play you. I can't play you at the moment." And part of that was a climate of racism against Freddie Rincon. So we're dealing something here where I'm telling you now something that Freddie Rincon told me that happened more than 30 years ago. And we haven't made enough. Spain hasn't made enough progress. And with Vinicius, at great personal cost to himself, and his own well-being, he is serving as an example to Spain of the depth of its own problem. So the ball now is in the court of the authorities in Spain, but not just the authorities in Spain. This isn't a top-down thing. It's there with the football fans themselves. So the ball is in the court of the authorities, the football fans in Spain. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to rise to the challenge? Are you going to show the whole world and the best player in your own league this kind of behaviour is intolerable? Or are you just going to try and sweep it under the carpet and deny it as you've been doing for too long? And the problem has now become so big that it won't fit any longer underneath the carpet. Do something about it now. That, I think, is the message which is coming very strongly from Brazil. And as I say, from football fans all over the world. And I would hope from a significant part of football fans in Spain who are ashamed and embarrassed by what we're talking about at the moment.
Worryingly, though, when we hear comments from Tebas today, it doesn't look like they're going to look internally, does it? Look, you did say Brazil have got their own problems. You mentioned that earlier. They've also introduced sanctions this year that could see teams receive points deductions if staff or fans commit racist acts. Tell us more about that. Is that what Spain needs to now do, is follow Brazil's example?
Perhaps. And I would have thought that there must be a stadium closure after what happened with Valencia, because in that situation, you're not talking about a single fan, are you? There's a collective thing going on there. What the best consequences are, I don't know. Whether it is, because just fines, I think, is never enough. Never enough. So that, I think, we can, all right, that's part of the mix, but it can never be enough on its own. Sporting, kicking out of competitions or losing points, that's a possibility. But I would have thought, again, in the insignificance of my opinion, because there are people far better qualified than myself to talk about punishments in case of racism, I would have thought when you see something which is as collective as what happened in the Valencia stadium yesterday, some kind of stadium closure, I think, is absolutely necessary, because the consequences need to be felt by those, not just the authorities, but by those who have perpetrated the crime.
Tim, it's always really good to talk to you. I'm sorry that we have to talk about this subject, though, so often. Thank you for joining us today. We've had a response from the La Liga president, Javier Tebas. He's responded to Vinicius Junior. Vinicius Junior responded to his tweet, and now Tebas has gone in again with another tweet. This is what he's had to say. It's in 4 bullet points. He says, number 1, neither Spain nor La Liga is racist. It's unfair to say this. Number 2, at La Liga, we report and go after racism in the strongest possible way within our remit. Number 3, we have reported 9 instances of racist insults this season. 8 have been against Vinicius Junior. We always identify the thugs responsible and take the complaints all the way to the relevant bodies who have the power to punish them. No matter how few they are, our efforts are relentless. And finally, he says, number 4, we cannot allow the reputation of a competition which is above all a symbol of unity between communities, where over 200 black players from 42 clubs are welcomed with respect and love from fans every week, to be tarnished. Cases of racism are an extremely rare occurrence. 9 reports, he says, in brackets, which we are committed to eliminating altogether. That's Javier Tebas responding to Vinicius Junior.